of Bhagavad-gita, chapter 5.
4.
Chapter 5.
5, yeah.
Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so this chapter begins very much like the chapter 3, the last chapter of Karma Yoga, also titled Karma Yoga, with Arjuna asking almost the same kind of question. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" So it's nice to repeat this because, as Krishna explained in chapter 3, the intricacies of action and reaction are very difficult to understand. So this chapter is going to also discuss karma, but it's going to discuss karma and introduce devotional service. So if you remember, there's different kinds of karma: karma, akarma, and vikarma. You remember? Okay. Now there's also sakama karma yoga and akama karma yoga. Okay. So kama, this word means desire. And so sakama karma means doing karma with desire, and akama karma yoga means acting without desire. So you can write that down. Those are important words. Sakama, S-A-K-A-M-A, sakama karma yoga, and akama karma yoga. So akama, this word, this prefix means without or negates. So with doing karma yoga without desire. So the last chapter, chapter 3, in discussion of karma yoga, was actually sakama karma yoga. And akama karma yoga means devotional service, learning how to do karma or karma yoga without desire or with devotion. And in this chapter, Krishna is going to introduce the concept of devotional service in Bhagavad-gita. Now, this perhaps might be a little technical, but back in chapter 2, before Krishna begins talking about working without attachment to fruits, he prefaces his remarks by saying that we don't follow the Vedas anymore. Okay. In 239, Krishna tells Arjuna, now listen how one works without attachment to results. So again, this is a big deal because at that time, everybody was following karma yoga, or they were doing dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Basically, this idea is karma yoga, that they were living very nice lives, had sense gratification with the idea that we will go to heaven at the end. So Krishna said back in chapter 2 that this is for less intelligent people. And basically what Krishna is doing, as he explained in the beginning of chapter 4, that I come again and again to establish the principles of religion, and beginning with this chapter, Krishna is going to establish the principles of religion for this age, which is Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so that's karma yoga. And again, beginning with this chapter, because he's talking about devotional service. So following the Vedas is out and devotional service is in. So this is actually a big deal. It's a big change, both culturally and spiritually. And why does Krishna arrange this? Because in this age of Kali, Lord Chaitanya comes and he gives the process of self-realization as chanting Hare Krishna and Bhakti Yoga, explaining what Krishna is saying about Bhakti Yoga, but he's giving the living example. What does it mean? So Lord Chaitanya is then fulfilling, he's showing the fulfillment of this instruction by Krishna. Okay? Okay. Now, then, beginning with text number 3, Krishna's going to, he begins by talking about duality, hate or desire. Hankering and lamenting. Generally, the people of this world, they are involved in this. They are hankering for what they don't have and lamenting for what they lost. So I want, and then I'm crying about what I lost. So this is how this world works. And Krishna states here, the one who neither hates nor desires the results of his activities is actually a renunciate. Repeating what he is saying in chapter 2 and chapter 3, this concept is what I include in the heading of what I call spiritual economics, or working without attachment to the results, offering the result to Krishna. So he's saying here that such a person who doesn't act for, who's not hankering and lamenting, it's easy for them to overcome material bondage. Again, we're captured in this world because of our attachment for the results of our activities. And so Krishna says, if you can let that go, then it's easy for escape. You can get, what do they call, terminal velocity, right? No. What do they call when the rocket's going up, it escapes the gravity of the Earth? I forget. They have some word, escape velocity. That's what it is. Escape velocity. So we can achieve escape velocity if we can give up hankering and lamenting. Okay, then, now with text 4, at 4, 5, 6, 7, Krishna is going to be speaking about devotional service and giving some detail about that. The first thing he says is devotional service is not really that much different than understanding how the world works, or what's called Sankhya philosophy, or the analytical study of this world. So these are the jnanis. You remember that word? Jnanis. The academics, right, who study Veda. They are trying to understand the absolute truth by analyzing the world, what it is. So Sankhya philosophy breaks down the material world into 24 constituent elements. And chapter 2 gave some introduction to Sankhya, that we are not the body, nature of the soul, karma, gunas, things like this. That's Sankhya. So Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, karma yoga, he's saying, is not very different. So he says devotional service, which is Bhakti Yoga, which is also karma yoga, karma yoga. They can be considered to be more or less the same thing. And if one understands the path of one, he can understand the path of the other. Almost. that is, the Jnanis, they have a misunderstanding about the Supreme. But their approach is basically the same. They're trying to understand how to become transcendental, how to get out of this world. So, and then 5, the same thing. One who knows that the position reached by the analytical study, jnana, can also be obtained by devotional service, and sees these things at the same level, can see things as they are. So this, to understand this, requires a little contemplation and introspection. Prabhupada breaks it down in the commentaries, which we're not going to get into because this is just a summary. But the idea is that even with Bhakti Yoga, we have to understand how this material world works. The spiritual progress is attained by slow degrees, by the method of constant endeavor for self-realization with the help of scriptural evidence. So we have a goal. We want to achieve the spiritual world, and we have to continue to endeavor to go in that direction. And for help, we need the help of the Vedas, so that it guides our activity, what to do, what not to do, yama niyama. Anyway, we need gyan. We need some understanding of things in Bhakti Yoga so that we can understand what to do. So they're the same to a point. At a later stage, they become different. But in the initial stage, they're the same. So, for example, in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is presenting the various aspects of the absolute truth: time, karma, God, the living being, material energy, and how these things are all related. So we develop, by studying Bhagavad-gita, we develop some understanding of these things. Okay. Now, Krishna, in number 6, he gives a little more detail about devotional service in saying that it's not simply a matter of giving up, renouncing material activities and engaging in devotional service. Rather, devotional service is not a matter of just giving up devotional things. Again, as we discussed in the past, people think that spiritual is the opposite of material. And so if material things means action, activity, then I sit and do nothing, this is spiritual. Or I meditate, this is spiritual. Well, not entirely. So it's devotional service is not simply that, there's more to it. Okay? A thoughtful person engaged in devotional service, however, can achieve the Supreme quickly. He says, without delay, quickly. And so then he gives the criteria how that is done in the next verse. One who works in devotion, who has pure soul, meaning pure mind, and controlling the mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled, because karma, he's performing karma or karma. So the result of his activities given to the Supreme Lord, working with devotion, he becomes free from the result and not entangled. So we have to, how do they say that now? There's a word, unpack. You have to unpack these shlokas and take them apart and look at them. So that's basically what we're doing. But the study of Bhagavad-gita really entails that, to take all these shlokas apart and see because it's not presented like modern textbook where we we gradually go from one concept, one idea to the other. It's kind of jumping around a little bit. And so we have to unpack it and then put it back together. Okay, now with 8, 9, and 14. The question is, who is acting? Okay. A person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, breathing, he's actually doing nothing at all. But while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and he is aloof from them. So, who are we? We're the spiritual being situated in the heart. We don't have this body and senses are extensions of ourselves, but they are not us. So even though the senses are engaged with their objects, we're sitting in there, we're not doing anything. But if we identify with the action and the result, that becomes the problem. We think I am the doer. So, he knows that he's doing nothing. The senses are engaged with their objects and he's aloof. So, one has to keep that in mind. Who am I? As we go through our activities, as we do things, as we live in this world, remembering, who am I? I'm not this body, I'm the soul living within the body. And I'm not the doer. Then we can keep ourselves disconnected from the result. We have, this is called Shastra Chakshusha. Chakshusha means eyes. Shastra is scripture. So seeing through the eyes of scripture. We have to see like that. So instead of seeing people, we see, oh, here's a person, here's a spiritual being, here's another spiritual being, and the dog, and the cat, and the cow, and the tree, and the bird. Spiritual persons, all equal. So the yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, senses, and even body, mind, intelligence, and even the senses for the purpose of purification, means dedicating the results to Krishna. And here is a culmination of those verses from 8 onward. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace, means comes to the 12. Comes to the transcendental position. That's what unadulterated peace means. Transcendental. Because he offers the results of all of his activities to me. But a person who doesn't do that and is greedy, who wants the result of his activities, he's entangled in this world. 13, repeating this, explaining who is a transcendentalist. Okay. And more will come later. Krishna is saying a lot about the transcendental position in this verse. So 13. Mentally renouncing the result of all actions, one can live happily in the body, called the city of 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. So you're working and not working at the same time. So this kind of sounds like Zen, right? The whole idea. What's the sound of one hand clapping? You're working, I'm working, and I'm not working at the same time. You know, very mystical. Okay, then 10, 11, 12, 13, overcoming attachment, working without attachment. And then 14, 15, the transcendental position. Now 15, Krishna is explaining that the Supreme Lord doesn't get involved. Krishna is the observer to our activities, but he's not involved. It says the Supreme Lord does not assume anyone's sinful or pious activities, embodied beings, those who are under the influence of Maya, illusion, become bewildered because of the ignorance covering their knowledge. Knowledge, what's it mean? Knowledge of transcendence. When, however, one is enlightened by knowledge by which that illusion, essence, is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So this is transcendental knowledge, allows one to understand things as they are. It gives us a different perspective. Just like in the laboratory, the laboratory in the psychology lab, right? They have rats going through mazes. Is that the psychology lab? Some kind of laboratory. Anyway, so they put the cheese here and they put the rat there, and then the rat has to find its way all the way to the cheese. So the rat, all he sees is walls, but he can smell the cheese someplace. So he's motivated. Where am I going to go? So for the rat, he just sees walls, but for the technician, the one doing the lab test, he sees the whole, he set up the maze. He knows how the whole thing works. So his perspective allows him to understand everything, what's going on. So that's the transcendental position, above, to be above the this material world and see and understand how it's working, and particularly how am I working in this world so that I can avoid becoming entangled and free myself from having to be born here again. Again, 17, reiterating that. And then the vision, Shastra Chakshusha, and 18, the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, elephant, dog, and a dog eater. So again, describing the transcendental position, 19. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity. What's that mean? Sameness. Everything is the same. That's like modern liberals. They want to make everything the same outcome, same for everybody. Right? Everybody gets the same result. That's not what it means. One whose minds is established in sameness. That means seeing everything from a spiritual perspective. All, as it said in the previous verse, sees the elephant, the dog eater, the brahmana as the same. And so seeing like that, he has conquered the conditions of birth and death. This is the transcendental position. So there's a number of places, as you read through Bhagavad-gita, you see what Krishna says, you can mark, okay, he explains what is the transcendental position. So he does this in chapter 2, text 64, something like that. It's the first time. But he repeatedly says about the transcendental position throughout the Bhagavad-gita, and this is one case. Okay, here he's talking 18, 19, 20. Who is a transcendentalist? What are their symptoms? And so if we understand that, we can then look at ourselves and we can see, have I become transcendental yet? Where am I? I'm chanting this mantra for many years. Have I become transcendental? What are my symptoms? Does this describe me? Am I there yet? That's one book I want to write. Am I spiritual yet? It's on my to-do list. So, again, 22. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are the senses contacting their objects. So this is big news for this time of the year. Black Friday's coming up in a few days. So everybody's going to the store. And we were just in the mall the other day. And we went to a shoe store, right? And there's unlimited pairs of shoes. A shoe is a shoe, right? But there's so many different varieties and styles. It's just like mind-boggling to see. So, and An intelligent person does not look at that and say, oh, this shoe is going to make me happier than that shoe. This shoe is better. He sees these are simply this contact of the senses with their objects. And if one doesn't get entangled in that, he can avoid the misery that comes from that. This is called happiness in passion, Rajagun. Right? Rajagun, the happiness of Rajagun is like nectar in the beginning. Oh, it's so nice. I went shopping. I got all these nice things. But in the end, what is it? It's misery. What you bought last year no longer satisfies you. Even though last year was like so nice, you're so happy to get it. It's still there in your closet or in your house, but it doesn't do anything for you anymore. Right? You have to go to the shop again. So this is called happiness in Rajagun. And there is no happiness there. It's temporary, flickering happiness. It's there today and then tomorrow. What happened? Gone. Love is like that too. Love and passion. So, real happiness is happiness in Sattva-gun or Shuddha Sattva, transcendental happiness, not from sense gratification. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, therefore the intelligent person doesn't have anything to do with it. So, it's a matter of extracting our expectations from our activity with sense gratification. People do sense gratification with some kind of expectation of a result. They don't think about it. They don't analyze, oh, this thing's going to make me happy. But because they're in a material conception of life, they look at something and they see, oh, I want that. Why? What is that? I want that. That means it becomes an extension of their ego. They identify with it. This thing is me. I not only am the body, but I am the things that I possess. And if I have the cool shoes, the children, right? Does your daughter have those shoes when she walks, they light up? You seen those? Have you seen? Yeah. Yeah, like that ball that she has, that she's bouncing. Huh? Yeah. So many children, they have these. So different kinds of things. Oh, I see that. I want that, right? Because I'm cool. If I got that, I put it on. I'm feeling like, right? I'm it. This is happiness in Rajagun. So, intelligent person says, "No, thanks. I'll take the ordinary shoes and avoid that." If before giving up the body, one is able to check these urges of sense gratification and the force of desire and anger, he can become happy in this world. That means that person, to check those desires, must come to Sattva-gun, the position of Sattva-gun. And in Sattva-gun, one is not disturbed by all that. One's mind doesn't hanker or lament, or I don't need that. I'm free from that desire and anger. This, again, duality. One can then be in Sattva-gun. One then can live happily in this world. So, where then is the happiness? It's not in Rajagun. It's described in the next sloka in Shuddha Sattva, whose happiness is within, who is active within, who rejoices within, whose aim is inward. This is the perfect mystic. So this is possible for the person in Sattva. They are free from identification with the body, with the senses, with the sense objects, and they find peace and tranquility. In Sattva, that's the result, is peace, peacefulness, and lasting happiness, not just temporary happiness, lasting happiness. Have you seen this video, Learning from Ladakh? We talked about that in the
Yeah.
car. Huh? Maybe sometime you come over. Now I've got a big screen.
Oh, okay.
Come out where we can see this video. It's very nice. It's about Ladakh, people in Ladakh who are living in Sattva Gun, a natural, simple way of life, and how they were very happy and peaceful. But then when tourism came, when money started coming to Ladakh, this means Rajagun entered into the picture, then they all became unhappy. Even though they have things, they want to get things, but they're not happy anymore. So it's a very instructive video. Maybe sometime.
Where is this?
Huh?
Where
I have it on my computer.
No, where, in which
Oh,
country?
Ladakh. Ladakh is they're fighting over there now, China and India. It's on the border, the western border, above Pakistan. Ladakh is north of Pakistan.
Yeah, you can see. Watch.
Okay, so then again, 25, transcendence, beyond duality. Those who are beyond duality that arise from doubts. Do I want it? Do I not want it? Is it good? Is it bad? Whose minds are engaged within, who are always active, busy, working for the welfare of all sentient beings. This means performing spiritual activities. Everybody benefits from the result of spiritual activity. This world is kept in balance by there's forces of darkness or evil and good. And simply the act of prayer helps keep the world in balance. So there's many spiritual cultures, some of the indigenous cultures, they understand that they do their spiritual activity for the purpose of keeping balance in the world. They understand that it counteracts the negative or the sinful behavior of many of demonic people. So this is what it means. Busy working for the welfare of all sentient beings. Simply performing spiritual activity, everyone benefits. And who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. So again, this chapter is about devotional service, how to act akama karma, doing everything for the pleasure of the Supreme, devotional service, pleasing Krishna. This is all describing various aspects of it, different details of it. And one can, again, unpack all of this and study it, and very interesting thing to do. All the different qualities that are described here, just make a list of them and then see them they're in the relationship. Now we're coming to the end. Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes, vision concentrated between the eyebrows, suspending the outward and inward breaths. This is generally what the yogis do when they're leaving this world. Controlling the mind, senses. The transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. So this particularly describes the yogi. There's one in one of our books, Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe you know where this is. There's a description of this. Is it in Bhagavad-gita? The yogi, he's sitting there, he's got very long fingernails and so on, and he's going through the top of the head. It's in Bhagavad-gita, isn't it?
You mean picture?
Yeah,
Or?
painting.
Painting.
Is it there? It's in the newer Gita. It was not in the original Gita, but is it in the Gita or is it in
I think
Bhagavatam?
it's in old.
In the old one?
Yeah. Yeah. Here, no.
Okay.
I remember.
Not in there?
In old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so yogis, they would do that. they would, right? The idea is whatever you think of at the time of death, that's where you go. So when the yogi, by his meditation, was able to bring everything under control, he would, and by practicing pranayama and so on, he could control the life airs, and he could choose, let's say, he could control when he would leave the body and thinking about the destination that he wanted to go to. So this is describing this yogi here. And there's a painting for that. There's a nice website. What is it called? Hare Krishna. I forget. It's got all the different paintings, all the books, many, many different. It's got the original books and many books by the acharyas. There's another one, krishnapath.org. That website is down, and it's the earlier one, which is what that was built on, is Hare Krishna something or other. I can find out, let you know. Anyway, on there you can find all the different paintings. There's a lot of transcendental art. So if you ever want one of these pictures that like's in the book and so on, you can find those online. And then finally, the last sloka of this chapter is extremely important. I quote this very regularly as I give class. Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatmamam sanktam richati. This sloka, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material existence. So this describes Krishna's transcendental position. Who is he? He's the enjoyer, the proprietor, and the dearmost friend of everyone. And we're in this material world because we're trying to take the place of Krishna in that regard. We want to be the enjoyer, we want to be the proprietor, and we want to be the dearmost friend of others. Right? We want everybody to love us. We're your dearmost friend. We do that with our pets too, right? My pet is depending on me for food, and he becomes so happy when I feed him. See how people have pets because what? Somebody at least is going to love me. My pet's going to love me, right? But we want that, and this is particularly true for parents because the children are so dependent on parents, and so we develop that kind of consciousness that my child, without me, I'm their best friend. I'm their well-wisher. But, and Prabhupada in this purport, or maybe other places, he says even sometimes children die. Despite the best effort of the parents, they have accidents, they have problems, they die. And so we see that even though we want to be their best friend, we think we're their best well-wisher, we're limited. So the point is to understand that this is Krishna. What's Krishna's position and what's our relationship to him? He's a supreme enjoyer. I am meant to give pleasure to Krishna. He's a supreme proprietor. Everything belongs to him. This is called the Ishavasham principle. And he's the dearmost friend of everyone. And we can help in that by helping connect other people, bringing them to Krishna, helping them in the process of self-realization. This way we can be the best friend of others. Prabhupada would sign his letters, your ever well-wisher. Such a nice saying. That he only wanted the good for everyone by giving us Krishna consciousness. Okay. So that's the overview of chapter 5. Questions, comments?
Okay. When we act toward others in an inappropriate way, do we prolong their self-realization.
Can you give me an example? What do you mean by act with others in a not appropriate way?
For example, I have my son, and
Your son.
in a childhood, I have some. I do something is not good for him, and he have a consequence in life after this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. In that regard, in terms of children, all of us are born into a family in which we will receive those experiences that will bring us to the same state of consciousness we had in the last life by the time we become adult. In one sense, then, the parent is innocent because this is all preordained, whatever is going to happen with the children. Again, karma is very difficult to understand, okay? So what's going to happen with the children is their destiny. And so are we guilty as parents for doing such things? Difficult to know. Very difficult. Easier if we take another example rather than our own children. Can you think of another example?
Or in a couple, is sometimes is one of them have a wrong
Behavior.
Mm-hmm. And what is in this situation?
The idea of relationships is to help us to see ourselves, because those who are close to us, they can see us better than we can see ourselves. We're covered by our own ego. Tommy? We're covered by our own ego, by our illusion. And so very difficult for us to see ourselves. But others, they can see us much easier. So they can give us feedback. And if we're willing to hear, if we have some humility, we can get benefit. That's not always the case. That we're willing to hear, or that the other person, their ego maybe enters into it and they don't give feedback in a very nice way. Instead, they're critical or judgmental, and so their own ego enters into it. And so there's also opportunity for them to learn from the interaction how they should behave. So again, these things they're complicated. They're not simple. Let me try to think of a simple example. So your question is basically, if we engage in some improper activity towards somebody else, is it bad for them? Is it bad for them or bad for us?
Bad for me.
Oh, bad for us.
Yeah. I take some part of karma, karma to my life.
But you ask for them first.
Ne, za sebe. Najprije to mi je odgovorio.
Aha,
I
okay.
onda sad ako to nešto krivo radim, da li ja preuzimam dio njihova karma?
This is next. First question is for them, and next
for us. Yeah. We become implicated in our activities. Okay, again, what's the motivation? Primary thing to understand. What is my motivation in dealing with that other person? Do I want to show myself better than them? Do I want to make them small, do I want to hurt them? Motivation. My motivation is extremely important. And it's motivation which is important in terms of bringing the karma, right? So again, what's karma? Let's say I have a particular behavior with somebody that's not good for them, okay? What's the result going to be for me? I develop my consciousness, my sense of self, based on all of the things that I do in this world, okay? If I'm absorbed in negative ways with others, I'm developing a particular consciousness. I will stay in that consciousness until I learn how to do things right, or until I purify myself, free myself from that ego, so that I can act in a proper way. So, does it hurt me? Yes, it's going to hurt me if I'm doing the wrong thing. Because why? Because it keeps me in material consciousness. Okay? Let's say, when I can become free from that, as slokas in this chapter are explaining, one who's freed himself from duality, then he can become happy. So, this chapter in general, these slokas are explaining the transcendental position. How do I get to that transcendental position? What's required of me to be able to attain that? And if I'm not doing those things, then I'm acting in such a way that I'm going to keep myself here. Huh? So is it harmful for me? Yes, it'll keep me bound here. Is it harmful for the other person? Difficult to say. Okay? Very well. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.